celebrate, I particularly celebrate, is that during the pandemic, when many people were in a place of uncertainty regarding their ministries, and we know how the pandemic affected many of us financially, and even though Lott Carey suffered financially because of the pandemic, none of our partners were, well, I should say all of our partners received their allotment on a regular basis, on time, the entire time of the pandemic. I think that's worth our celebration, because we know that when America gets a cold, the world gets pneumonia. And so that is just a way of introducing him, to say that he has done a stellar job of leading this organization. And one of the things that my director of media and I found out is that he is an amazing storyteller. When we traveled to Ghana and Liberia, Stacy and I would nudge each other and say, we about to shout, because he could tell stories with such passion and clarity, and with such vision, and the power of harnessing your moral imagination with language, that it inspired you. And so he is coming now to talk to us about, is it worth it? The Lott Carey mission and its impact on human history. Would you put your hands together and receive now our Executive Secretary Treasurer, who will bless us in this session, Reverend Emmett Dunn.
Thank you, Madam President, and to each of you, my friends. You can have your seat. We're not going to take another offering just yet. Not yet, not yet. Let me express my own thanks to Dr. McCrary and to Sister, the Reverend Casey Jones. She wouldn't mind me telling you this story, but prior to Casey coming to the Corporate Baptist Fellowship, I served on the executive staff at the Baptist World Alliance at the time. I tell this story because CBF is not just in this dispensation trying to do what is right. CBF was birthed from doing what is right. CBF comes out of the Southern Baptist Convention. All of the churches originally that formed CBF were all Southern Baptist churches. The Baptist World Alliance had to make a very difficult decision, whether to accept CBF as a convention, knowing that they would be upsetting Southern Baptist Convention. Understand, Southern Baptist Convention was giving the Baptist World Alliance $450,000 every year.
Wow.
Every year. CBF broke away from SBC on doctrinal issues. And it had to do with how to affirm our mothers, our sisters, and our aunties and daughters. Affirm the call to ministry. And when we were faced, we being Baptist World Alliance, Casey, I'm talking about you, when we were faced with the difficult decision as to whether to lose $450,000 or do what was right, we decided to do what was right. And we accepted CBF as full members of the Baptist World Alliance. So CBF is not only just now doing what is right. CBF was birthed because they dare to do what was right at the time and what is right today. So Casey, please, I'm sure the president have already said this to you, but please convey, and we will reduce this into writing, obviously, but convey to the organization CBF that we appreciate not only what you are doing with us, but what you have done and what you continue to do. Allow me, before we get into our presentation, to thank our staff. For the most part, for the most part, the president and I get all of the praises heaped on us, and we don't mind that. But we like to do what is right as well.
right.
I always, the African proverb that say, whenever you see a turtle on the stump,
That's right.
chances are that turtle didn't get there by itself.
That's right.
So whenever you see us in the spotlight, we didn't turn these lights on.
That's right.
We have a staff that works diligently. So I want to say thanks. Everything's happening in this room this week. Dr. Amanda Haynes is responsible for giving leadership to all of this. So Dr. Haynes, we thank you for that. All of our logistical arrangement, as we know, is always managed by Sister Tanya Peterson, who does an exceptional job. And we thank her, and those who work alongside of her, we thank them for that as well. Mr. Atiba Goatley and Mrs. Conning David. We also want to recognize our communication manager in the presence of the Reverend Aaron Hendry. So we just wanted to ensure that you knew who the persons were working behind the scene. And obviously my thanks to our president, who I just said to her, I didn't think I was planning a revival. I was planning a conference. She wants to turn this into revival. But if that's what it takes to get $180,000, I'll plan a revival tonight. Tonight. We can continue. Well, my task today is what I really want to accomplish in this session is to kind of take you back in our history as to how we arrived here, and decide to make a decision. And I think after Dr. McCurry's testimonial, we've answered that question already. Because the question I want us to answer is it worth it? Is it worth it? In my other life, I used to plan youth conferences around the world. And I was preparing this one in Singapore. And we were spending big dollars on that. And in my conversation with an official from the Singapore government, because we're trying to get them to give us access to do an open air service. And they have strict policies giving access to all religion in Singapore. And they didn't want to come across as giving us access and denying access to somebody else. And in that conversation, he asked me the question. He said, why are you guys doing all of this, bringing these young people from all around the world? Is it really worth it?
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Is it really worth it? Leroy Fitz, from which I get most of my research on this presentation, in his book, The Lott Carey Legacy of African American Missions, he stated these words. It may be said that there are two great beginnings in the life of every individual.
Okay.
Two great beginnings that leaves an indelible impression on who you are. There is the day when you're born, and there's the day when you discover why you were born. Fitz argues that the Reverend Lott Carey, the one for whom our beloved community is so named, that Reverend Lott Carey missionary consciousness was informed by his experience as an oppressed individual. This consciousness developed into his own psyche that influenced and transformed the way American missionary theology was shaped. Now, I'm not saying African American, I'm saying American missionary theology was shaped by Lott Carey's consciousness of exploring the idea of being a missionary in a land that he had no experience because of his own understanding of coming out of an oppressed situation.
Okay.
Fitz conclude that black missionary theology, as personified by Reverend Lott Carey, comes out of our collective experience as an oppressed people. That we cannot afford to divorce who we were from who we are.
Right.
And whatever we shall be must be informed by both where we were and where we are.
Right. Right.
These were the words of the Reverend Lott Carey prior to his departure from Richmond in 1821.
Wow.
He said, I am an African, and in this country, meaning the U.S., however meritorious my conduct and respectable my character, I cannot receive the credit due either. I wish to go to a country where I shall be estimated by my merits, not by my complexion. And I am bound to labor for my suffering race. It is therefore not surprising that when our founding fathers and praying mothers met to establish this missional community that we called the Lott Carey Baptist Foreign Mission Convention, it is no surprise that they chose the name Lott Carey. Lott Carey Baptist Foreign Mission Convention was not the first black Baptist mission organization. In response to requests from Africa after the loss of the life of Reverend Lott Carey, word came back to the African American Baptist community here requesting and desirous of others to go to Liberia to continue the work started by Lott Carey. And in 1840, the American Baptist Missionary Convention was formed. In 1862, the second African American missionary group was also established, named the Western and Southern Missionary Baptist Convention, with a scope as national as that of the American Baptist Missionary Convention. In 1866, both of these organizations merged to form one unified body. Between 1866 and 1875, several other African American missional groups were established, and they all came together under the auspices of the Consolidated American Baptist Missionary Convention. By 1878, this convention unfortunately dissolved due to infighting. The dissolution of this group adversely affected what was going on the mission field. This vacuum gave way to the establishment of the Baptist Foreign Mission Convention, USA, in 1880. I'm going somewhere with this. Over the next 10 years, several attempts were made to unify all of the Baptist groups that were trying to do missional work on the continent without any success. By 1893, the mission work experienced a significant decline, with only one missionary serving on the continent.
Wow.
And this is 1893. A renewed effort was made to unify all of the groups. This time, they succeeded and gave birth to the National Baptist Convention, USA, in 1894. And subsequently, they formed the Foreign Mission Board of the National Baptist Convention, USA. I'm going somewhere with this. Once again, in 1897, In 1897, controversy over structure arose, and a group of clergymen opted to challenge the structure at the time around two key areas. One was fiduciary responsibility. The National Baptist leaders were challenged as to the lack of transparency. This is in 1897. 1897. Look to your neighbor and say 1897. They were challenged for the lack of fiduciary transparency. They were also challenged on the de-emphasis of foreign mission. Because what they had done was they were using 75% of missional dollars on themselves.
Wow.
I didn't make this up. I didn't make this up. And giving only 25%,
My Lord,
to missions. These clergymen, predominantly from the great state of Virginia and the great state of North Carolina, they got together, and in December 1897 formed what today we have as the Lott Carey Baptist Foreign Mission Convention. Around 5 strategic emphases. One, that all foreign mission money collected from churches should be used to foster foreign missions only. Two, that all persons handling mission money should be held strictly responsible for the proper distribution of the same. That cooperation among all Baptists in missionary work is both Christian and desirable and must be encouraged. That race prejudice and caste distinction are incompatible with Christian ethics and should be denounced. These were the strategic principles that guided our founding fathers and praying mothers that birthed this institution that we call the Lott Carey Baptist Foreign Mission Convention.
Wow.
Fiduciary transparency. Last September, Dr. Stewart and I received a telephone call from a clergyman in this DMV area that at the time was a leader in one of our African American Baptist national organization headquarters in these parts. Hear how the conversation went. Well, he started by saying, "Thanks for taking the call." He said, "I met a gentleman who I believe is able to invest in mission work." He said, "And I can think of no other." I started by saying, this gentleman is a leader in one of our African American Baptist National Convention, not Lott Carey. And he called in Lott Carey to introduce Lott Carey to a potential donor. He concluded by saying, because I know what Lott Carey is doing. Fast forward, we've advanced that conversation that as recently as this past Monday, I met for the first time this potential donor. And while I do not know and cannot say how much the question of whether he's going to give is no longer a question. Because when I met with him, he said to me, he said, I too have asked the question. He said, and I have come to the conclusion that Lott Carey is about the business of doing good. Now, it's very obvious that I do not take credit for this. I inherited an organization that back in 1897 stood on the principle of being responsible with God's money. So the question, as we wrestled with, is it worth it? I'd like to take you back and ask another question. What was life like for African Americans in 1897? What was life like for African Americans in 1897? I don't have to remind you. Life was difficult. But notwithstanding, I'm going somewhere with this. But notwithstanding, here were African American churches that even though they were struggling themselves with their own access to proper education, with lack of access to proper health care, living under the rules of segregation, they dare to deny themselves and go to places that no one was willing to go. There's something that we must say about people who would deny themselves, give up their own fight to build up others. We must give credit to those persons. We would not be here if they had not dared to cross the high seas. We are benefactors for persons who made ultimate sacrifices so that today we can be proud members of this wonderful missional community. But what was the world like in 1897? Let's start with the world population. In 1897, we had 1.6 billion people in the world. Today, we are just over 8 billion people. The Christian population in 1897 was 559 million. Today, we are 2.6 billion. World politics. What was world politics like in 1897? I start by saying in 1897, there were only, you can put a bad African mic for me, there were only 3 independent black nations. In 1897, there were only 3: Haiti, Liberia, and Ethiopia. Look at that map. That entire continent was run by white men.
Wow. In 1913.
When Lott Carey was being formed, there were only 2 independent African countries, Liberia and Ethiopia. And that didn't really start to change until the late 50s. The majority of Africa gained independence between 1959 and 1969. Think about it. Think about it. From the creation of God's world, this continent was not liberated totally until 2001. And we are still suffering under the effects of colonialism. But this is where our forefathers and our praying mothers decided to go. And this is where we have our largest footprint as Lott Carey. Is it worth it? Really? The world is much different today than what it was in 1897. Let's go to the second map. In 1897, 82% of Christians live in what we call the global north, as you see from the map with the green dots. And only 33% of Christians, only 18% of Christians live in the global south. By 2020, we have a flip. You have more Christians, 67%, living in the global south, and 33% in the global north. And I'm talking all Christians. Talking about impact, do you want to know where Lott Carey has spent all of her dollars? You can guess it. In the global south. In the global south. I'm not making this up. Lott Carey entered the foreign mission field physically in 1899. We like to think that Lott Carey's first footprint was in Liberia in 1902. But Lott Carey's first footprint was actually in South Africa in 1899. Wow. Just 2 years after it was formed. And I didn't know this, Dr. Gutler, until December. I was in South Africa. And they were telling the story. They were telling the story. And every time they said something, my shoulder went higher. When they got to the climax of the story, they were basically saying to me that because of Lott Carey's investment in the KwaZulu nation, where our Zulu brothers and sisters come from, they have a data that says that at one point, Lott Carey churches baptized 443 men from the Zulu nation. Wow. That our influence continue up till today. So Lott Carey, unlike all of the other African American missional organizations I mentioned earlier in this presentation, Lott Carey has had 25 plus years of unbroken missional engagement around the world. All of the world wars put together, Lott Carey did not cease. As a Liberian, I can speak that even in the midst of our 20 years of civil disturbance, Lott Carey did not stop her engagement with life. As a matter of fact, I'm taking off my EST hat and putting on my Liberian hat. As a matter of fact, Lott Carey was the only foreign, I don't like that word, the only international missional organization that kept her school open. Even when students were not able to go, our teachers were being paid. Yeah. Praise God. You want to talk about impact? That's impact. Yes, Lord. The world is changing. This shift from the global north to the global south is significant, my friends. It's significant because it tells us that where our investments are, the church is growing.
That's right. Yeah.
Lott Carey, I want to encourage to be encouraged by this.
That's right.
We are partly responsible for part of this growth. We are partly responsible for part of this growth. When Dr. Gottlieb came on, he was introduced to a handful of mission partners, probably 5 or 6. And during his time with us over that 20-year period, he had taken us to 27 different mission places around the world. 27. Today, we're only supporting 14 projects in 10 countries. So again, I ask the question, is it worth it? Why are we still not in 27 countries?
Okay.
I told you I was going somewhere with this. When Dr. Gottlieb first started, we were doing more with less. We were doing more. I mean, mothers, you know how we stretch the budget. You guys know how to stretch the budget. We're doing more with less. But today, our mission dollars are not where it used to be.
Right.
But guess what? The mission opportunity is also not where it used to be. But while the dollars coming down, the opportunities continue to go up.
That's right.
If this is worth it, then we need to put our resources behind it. We can't claim that it's worth it and we're not supporting it.
Right.
So we need to take that introspective look and see and ask the question that was asked many years ago by my friend David when he asked, who benefits the most? Out of all that we do, who benefits the most? My response to that is both Lott Carey and our brothers and sisters, we all benefit from this. We all benefit from it. In the height of the pandemic, our late friend, Dr. Henry Mugabe,
Yes.
he called and he said, Doc, you got to help us. By this time, as Dr. Stewart told you, I am struggling, like all of you pastors in here, struggling as to how to keep this ship afloat. And I said, oh, not one more. He said, Doc, you got to help us. He said, because we're going to die anyway.
Wow.
He said, we're either going to die from COVID or we're going to die from starvation.
Wow.
He said, either way.
Either way.
He said, he said, either way, Doc, we're going to die. Well, that didn't happen because Lott Carey immediately poured in $25,000 to provide food for his starving community.
Mama.
That's impact. And let me answer the question for you. Yes, it's worth it. late last year, the president and I led a group to Liberia in celebration of the 200th anniversary of the landing of the Reverend Lott Carey on the shores of Liberia. And as a sign of solidarity with our seminary family, we donated $2,000. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the president of the seminary, because we thought he was going to use the money for scholarships, upgrade the library. He said, because of that gift of $200, Madam President, 2,000, I'm sorry, we were able, for the first time since the war, to connect our faculty housing with water.
Mama.
That's impact.
Yes.
A few months ago, Dr. Haynes got a call from one of our colleagues from Sierra Leone, pleading because there's a village outside of Freetown that needed food badly. We don't have a relationship with Sierra Leone. She said, what should we do? I said to Atiba, I said, what do we have in the budget for Sierra Leone? He said, nothing. I said, what do we have in the budget for food? He called a figure. And I said to Dr. Haynes, whether we are in Sierra Leone or not, we are there now.
Yeah.
And we provided food for that entire village. That's impact. I had the occasion with 5 of our pastors, I see some of them in here, went to Kenya early this year. And they took me to the well that was, I said, started under Dr. Goatley, ended under Dr. Moss. And they turned on the tap, and water came gushing out. And while I started to shout right at that point, he said to me, I need to show you something. He took me along the way and showed me a water pump that was not on the campus that we own, but was outside the fence, because that water pump was not to serve our Lott Carey campus, but it was to serve 300 families outside of the Lott Carey. That's impact. One of the things that I am so proud of is the fact I can go anywhere and call the name Lott Carey, and people will know that we are a convention of integrity. Like I always say, we do good work. We do good work. So how can you walk alongside us as we walk alongside others? I've discovered that Lott Carey is not a convention. Lott Carey is not a building at 802 Corporate Drive. Lott Carey is not a farm or school or Lott Carey is like the church. Meaning you. Hence, the president and I, we are rolling out with the approval of the board a new opportunity that every one of you can say, I am can say, I am. Meaning, I know all of our churches gave. I know a lot of you in here, you gave as individuals. But we're going to formalize that giving. We're going to formalize that giving and say that each of you can be an individual member of Lott Carey. Because at the end of the day, Lott Carey is you, Lott Carey is me, Lott Carey is us. You will receive in the coming weeks a brochure that gives opportunity for you to be a faith member, a covenant member, an ambassador, and each of those categories give you access to this community that we call Lott Carey. My friends, our coming together, yes, it's for inspiration, it's for information, but really it's to encourage one another as we invest in mission. You may not know this, but if Lott Carey was to close down, if Lott Carey was to close down, thousands of young people would not have access to proper education.
Right.
Today we boast of having upwards of 10,000 students in India, 700 in Liberia, 1,200 in Nigeria. Not to mention the low support we gave to our theological schools in Zimbabwe. If we were to close down, the only functioning clinic where Reverend and Mrs. Chariot operates in Kenya would close down. And if that clinic was to close down, there is none within a 50-mile radius of that place. If we were to close down. So is it worth it? Why you think CBF will give us $90,000 over a 3-year period? I don't mean any disrespect, but white folk don't give money like that. And to give it without any strings attached. No string attached. Casey, there's no fine print I need to read, right? Okay, good. She confirmed, no fine print. The 90 grand is 90 grand. Why Dr. McCreary would match that? Why? Why Greg Jackson would dedicate his entire life, that even after he's president, he calls me to find out what he can. Why? Why would Gottlieb give 20 plus years of his life dealing with us? Why would Dr. Amanda Himes, a young, vibrant, earned doctorate, leave other opportunities and say, I want to work for Lott Carey? Why? Why Aaron Henry would not try to work for corporate? And he said to me, he said, I love what I do for life. Why? Why would all of you, why would a Dr. Washington, one of our elders, would brave the traffic coming from Baltimore? That even when she can't travel, she would get on that mission education Zoom and participate like why? Why would a Mary Hall, 94 years old, would be here this week? Why? Why? Because we're worth it. It's worth it. My friends, I could tell you stories and stories. But at the end of the day, it's not. We don't do what we do because we want people to say you do good work.
That's right.
We do it because we believe in the Great Commission. We do it because we are the church. And so I have no doubt. Dr. Stewart always, she got a phrase, without fear of contradiction. She got that phrase. She said, without fear of contradiction. Without fear of contradiction. I am convinced. Without a shadow of a doubt. That every one of you in here will sign up to be a member of Lott Carey. I have absolutely no doubt. No doubt. Because, you hear it, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Thank you, Madam President, for what you do. Thank you, Dr. Gutley, for maintaining the integrity of our forefathers and foremothers all the way back in 1897. Can you believe that? That they were standing up against their own colleagues. And today, we have maintained fiduciary integrity. So thank you. Thank you. On behalf of our staff, our president, our board, thank you. Thank you for walking alongside of us. And I hope when you leave this place that you all go wearing one of these shirts that declare you, I am. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. We have time, and we have time to be engaged. So any questions, any comments, anything you want to know about Lott Carey, I gave you my number last night, 301-793-1747. You know, that's not a voicemail. Trust me, that's not a machine. That's me. And so you can call me. But hey, any questions, any comments? Yes. Yes, everything that we've done this week will be uploaded. That's why these two cameras are doing, yeah. And to our online community, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Any comments? Any questions? Okay.
It's worth it.
Is it? Monsieur, is our preacher here? Okay, because if our preacher here, we don't need to prolong the time, but yeah, just go ahead. She's gonna check. But I'm gonna like we say, like they say on Capitol Hill, Dr. Cynthia Thurner-Wood, I will yield the rest of my time. Oh no, that's a hand back there. I was just about to yield the rest of my time to the president.
I want to know about your T-shirt.
Oh, yeah, if you just go out the door, all the beautiful ladies out there, they would tell you all about the T-shirts. I can show you there's one out there with your name on it. As long as you can release a check, you're going to get it. Yeah. So I'll yield the rest of my time to the honorable lady here from Memphis, Tennessee.
Can we put our hands together for Dr. Emmett Dunn for that amazing session and that historical retracing of our history, which it just reaffirms why Lott Carey is worth it. The fiduciary integrity, the integrity as an institution of a consistent commitment to integrity. And if I wasn't a part of Lott Carey, some people say when they come to church, if I wasn't a member here, I'd join all over again. But it is a blessing to be connected to an organization like this. Can we celebrate the goodness of God one more time and thank Reverend Dunn for his presentation? I want to echo, and I'll go ahead and make my closing remarks now so that we can move swiftly and seamlessly in our last session. But I want to echo Reverend Dunn's comments by thanking our staff again for their commitment, for their tenacity. It's not many of them, but they get a whole lot of work done, and I think we ought to stand and give them a standing ovation for the work that they've done, not just this week, but throughout the year. And we are blessed to have them. He's already identified them by name, but I certainly want it to be reflected as a part of the, as they say, minutes of this meeting, that the president of the convention appreciates their sacrifice. The only thing I would say after the, in follow-up to Reverend Dunn is that I would invite you, as I often do when we go places. When we went to Liberia and Ghana, I said to the group that made the pilgrimage with us, now that you've seen what Lott Carey does, I invite you to be an ambassador. That's a part of what we're inviting you to do with this I Am Lott Carey initiative that we are rolling out. We see that the work is definitely worth it. And sometimes the best source of information or the best referral is your personal testimony. And so I invite you, as you leave, if you have not already begun, to talk about the amazing work that Lott Carey is doing, to share it with your friends. All of us have a circle of influence. All of us are connected to ministries. All of us are connected to people who have resources. And as we saw this morning, giving begats giving. We heard Reverend Casey Jones give testimony and bear witness to the impact of Lott Carey on her life, which resulted in a gift of $30,000 per year for the next 3 years. And then Dr. Micah McCrary jumped up and said, I'm going to match it. And so we see what can happen when hearts are knitted and when we are gathered around a common vision, but most importantly, when we can see the work. And so I would invite you to be an ambassador. I would invite you, if you are a pastor and you don't necessarily have the bandwidth or the discretionary time, if you will, to invest in coming to meetings and participating in Lott Carey at the level that you would like to identify a Lott Carey representative in your congregation who can be a cheerleader for Lott Carey and help your congregation to understand the work that we are doing. And again, I would echo what Reverend Dunn has said and ask you to purchase a t-shirt so that we might start a movement. Take your picture on social media and post it on social media. All of us are on Facebook. All of us, most of us are on Instagram. Some of us are even on Twitter. When you leave, make sure you take some selfies. Before you leave, take some selfies, because we want to start a movement that will build momentum beyond this space. And then finally, we want to invite you to join us in Greensboro, North Carolina, August 14th through the 17th for our 126, right, annual session. I'm already excited about what God is going to do when we gather in that place. I would like to ask if there are any other announcements that need to be made that are upcoming announcements. I know they're on the back of your, or let me just ask you to read your program if you have it, because there are some upcoming events that we want to encourage you to participate in. Those are my comments. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to hearing from Reverend Dr. Judy Fentress Williams. We'll reconvene at 11:30 for our closing worship. And for those of you that are traveling, we pray for traveling mercies for you. Can we tell them the offering from last night?
Yeah, we're upwards of 32,000 right now.
The offering as of now, and that's not counting electronic giving, right, is already at $32,000 from last night. To God be the glory. We'll be back at 11:30, and we will conclude our time together in this space. God bless you.